Andrew Brunette is starting the season on the hot seat. How quickly could the Predators realistically make a coaching change if this team sputters in October?
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off our week, our Monday episode, shouting out our Locked On Predators insiders and our everydayers who tune in to talk Nashville Predators hockey. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio. And friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I am Emma Lingan, and I'm an NHL reporter and host with the Hockey News.
Emma, there is probably no head coach in the NHL in as precarious a position to start this season as Andrew Brunette. The Nashville Predators are in desperate need of a strong start. If Bruno and this roster want to be taken seriously this season, today, Emma and I are going to have an very honest conversation about what the timeline may look like for the players and the coaching staff to get this going. We're going to discuss why a strong start is so important this season in particular, which teams could stand in the way of Nashville getting out of the gate quickly, and we're going to debate what a realistic timeline could be for a coaching change if the early season feels like a failure. Before we dive into that depressing topic, we do want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All right, Emma, look, here is what's real. The Nashville Predators are, to me, the Forrest Gump box of chocolates this season because we literally have no idea what we're going to get. I mean, it could be like the absolute chocolate truffle of amazement, or it could be like, I don't know, what's one of the bad chocolates in a box
I
of
don't know.
chocolates?
The one, like, sometimes they have some weird flavors, like one, like, oh, this one's filled with toothpaste. Okay, cool. Like that. I mean, honestly, it could be chocolate truffle or it could be toothpaste. Either,
Yeah.
and again, either way, sure.
Yeah. Like truly, there is no way to predict. We do not know what we are going to get from the Nashville Predators. And it had me thinking, Emma, like, is there any other team that you can think of just off the top of your head whose season feels as unclear to you as Nashville? Now, I know that we're so immersed in the pain that maybe it feels bigger, but really and truly, like, I was sitting down and thinking, like, what teams could be a bigger surprise? Like, what teams do we have no idea where to set expectations? And I'm like, I don't know that there's another team, and maybe you can think of some where you're like, oh, Forrest Gump, no idea, box of chocolates.
Yeah, like we are in a unique position where we're biased, of course, because we're very close to the situation. I mean, it is hard because there are other teams that, are expected to take steps forward. Others that like Pittsburgh, for example, expected to take a step back. But that's, again, you kind of know what's going to happen. I mean, I don't know. In terms of like just total uncertainty, maybe like a Vancouver, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But again, it just, I don't know.
It's like you can set some sort of expectation for most teams in the league and feel like you're going to land in the ballpark. I don't think anybody believes that Nashville even landed in the ballpark of what expectations were last season. You and I were talking before the show about baseball, and I referred to Philadelphia's baseball team as the baseball Flyers. And
Yeah.
that is like Nashville were the Philadelphia baseball Flyers of expectation. Like it didn't quite nail it. Like it's not even really the same thing. And I don't know. I really had a hard time thinking of like, what is a team where there is no clear bullseye with some expanding circles around it, where you think, okay, the dart's going to land somewhere on this
Mhm.
target. I have nothing. I have nothing for
Uh,
Nashville. Nothing.
I think part of it too, I mean, again, even if you look at like Vancouver, as I said, was the first team
Mhm.
that came to mind in terms of like, I don't really know what to expect from them this year. But I think what makes Nashville so different is because we went into last season with that bullseye. And it's like, all right, maybe, like, man, they're not going to win a Stanley Cup, but like they're going to be somewhere in, on that dartboard of like, well, they're gonna, be better than they were a year before. And
Mhm.
were we
Friends.
wrong? And by we, I mean literally everyone, because no one has any idea what happened. And then people from other markets, people from, like national radio and television shows are calling me, asking me to come on the show and talk about what happened to the Nashville Predators. I'm like, hey, if you figure it out, let me know, because we
Yeah.
can't figure it out. Like,
Yeah.
it was just such a conundrum. And so I think it was that disparity between what the expectations were and how far below those expectations the Predators landed. That's why we come into this year like, I don't even know. I don't even know where the dartboard is. I'm just throwing
Yeah.
darts in the air, and which is
It-
probably dangerous actually, but I'm like, I have no idea.
yeah. It's like lawn jarts blindfolded after you're
Yeah.
spun around. You don't
Mhm.
know. That's what it feels like with Nashville. It's just it is not a predictable season. And we talked with JD Young on Friday, and you and I had talked about this. JD was like, Nashville makes the playoffs. I believe that. Nashville is one of the worst teams in the league. I would totally believe that. And the uncertainty has to be settled this season. This season is so critical for Nashville because so much hinges on what is real and what is believable about this Nashville Predators team. For instance, we had mentioned this earlier. If this season Stamkos, Marchessault, Brady, Skjei don't produce and don't become players who elevate this team, then you're going to look back 2 free agency signings ago and say, big mistake. Long term, big mistake. You look at things like Roman Josi. If you lose Roman Josi to injury, you have to very seriously consider the long term viability of the blue line for this team. It's about early momentum, because right now you have to figure out who Andrew Brunette is. And you have to figure out who this roster is. Because even, it's so easy to point the finger at what happened last season, but it is actually very difficult to nail down how much was coaching responsibility. I think there were certainly some things that needed to change coaching wise, but how much was player performance and player issues? I think it's pretty clear there were some issues there individually and collectively that needed to change. This season cannot be unsuccessful for the Nashville Predators. And I don't know how we can predict whether that's going to be true or not, whether they are going to be able to turn a corner or not. Like, I just don't know how to predict that. It's horrible.
Yeah, it's not good for those of us with anxiety and fear of the unknown.
Mhm.
We really
Mm,
don't enjoy it.
no.
Because again, like you said, there's either outcome would be believable, because now in 2 seasons under Andrew Brunette, we've had 2 completely different seasons. We've had one where the team outperformed expectations, and it was a pleasant surprise. And then the next season, total opposite. It was they underperformed, not just underperformed, but like dramatically underperformed
Right.
expectations, and was a very unpleasant surprise. And so now this is kind of got to be like the tiebreaker season, in terms of like, not saying you can learn everything you need to know from one season, but I mean, in this limited sample size that we have, we've seen 2 very different teams, and now we've got to figure out, like, this is our first chance really to get a clearer look at like, okay, which one is it? Is it Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde? Because we've seen both, and we believed both at various
Yeah.
points. And so now it's like, okay, so which is it?
Yep. So much about this season is going to hinge on getting a hot start. Coming up, we're going to talk about how likely a hot start is actually going to be for the Nashville Predators. We're going to talk about what is and is not going to work in their favor in the first few months. Today's episode is brought to you by our great friends at FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you are all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game. You can use FanDuel to track your favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, it is fast to pay out, and it makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether you are placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like you are a part of the game. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Emma, we are talking about the Nashville Predators and trying to figure out what is next for this franchise. What is next for the coaching staff? What is next for the roster? What is going to be true? And so much about what happens with Nashville hinges on them getting a hot start. So last week, of course, the Predators did their schedule release along with all the other teams in the NHL. And now it becomes less nebulous theory and slightly more measurable. Although I think if we learned anything last season, it is that hockey on paper sure is not hockey on the ice. So we're looking at this kind of with a grain of salt, but also trying to gauge what does a hot start look like and what is a timeline to really know if it's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So, Emma, ballpark for me, how many games can Barry Trotz logistically, realistically give Andrew Brunette and this roster before he either knows it's working or knows he has to make a change?
For me, I don't know. So I did not do the math ahead of time. I apologize to see how many games this is, but to
That's
me,
not what we do here,
no,
by the way.
trust me, you don't want me doing any kind of math. That's
We're
not
not
good for
mathing.
anyone.
Mm-mm.
I would say like the benchmark point of this season for that would be when they go to Sweden for
Mhm.
the series in November. I think that, if you don't have a winning record or at least real close to a winning record by the time you come back from Sweden, I think that's your season right there. Not
Yeah.
saying there's no coming back from that, but I mean, I think that that's a pretty good indicator because I do think that once you do come back from that, it's going to be really difficult to get into a rhythm, I think. And
Yes.
I mean, I even saw this with the team I traveled with back in 2022 to the Global Series in Prague. And that was at the start of the season. That was before the season even had really gotten going. And there wasn't a rhythm to get out of, to get back into.
Right.
Even then, uh, all of the guys were talking about how challenging it was to get back reacclimated. I talked to some folks in Dallas who went with the Stars to Finland last year, and they had that November global series, like the one
Right.
the Preds have coming up. So that they said the same thing, like really challenging, really difficult. So that's kind of why I put that benchmark there. But
Mhm.
I also just think that that's sort of an indicator when you look at the schedule that they have. I think you've got a pretty good mix of like should wins and probable losses, and then you've
Mhm.
got some kind of wild cards in there. I think the early part of the Predators schedule for this upcoming season is a bit of a mixed bag, which I think is a good thing in terms
Mhm.
of determining what this means for the rest of the season.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think such a hitch in the giddy up from this being more of a straightforward conversation for the Nashville Predators is the Global Series game. November 14th and 16th are the two games in Sweden, and they are games 19 and 20 for the Predators, which is the window in which you have to, as my grandmother would say, roughly translated, poop or get off the pot if you want to be serious about this. And it's difficult to make a coaching change before something like that. It's maybe too late to make a coaching change after something like that. It's in the window in which, you sort of have to have called it at that point. And my biggest fear is if the Predators start 0-5. Now what do you do? Because last season, 0-5, and we were like, okay, nobody panic. They're just warming up. Look, friends, there is no runway for this Nashville Predators team going into the season. You cannot warm up. You cannot start 0-5. And yet, I will tell you, if the Predators start 0-5, I don't know that Barry Trotz would be comfortable pulling the trigger on a coaching change, even if they start 0-5. And you wait much longer than that. And again, you're right in that window of getting ready to go to the Global Series. The first 10 games of the season for the Predators, like you said, it's a very interesting mixed bag. You've got Columbus, Utah, Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, Winnipeg, Anaheim, Vancouver, LA Kings, and Dallas. Now, not a lot of those teams look like on paper friends. So, on paper, they don't look like they're going to take giant steps back. I think of Utah and I'm like, oh, Utah, second game. That's going to be super interesting. There's 6 home games, 4 road games. There's like a little road trip. So those 4 games are, kind of compressed together in those first 10 games, which sometimes the players say works in their favor to get out, get on the road, get away from the distractions, be together as a team, do that like team bonding thing. When you think about the first, let's just go 10 games of the season, what do you need their record to be, Emma, to feel like this team is not in dire straits?
5-5.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I would be okay with that. But it can't start 0-5. You can't lose 5 in a row and then win 5 in a row. So that's the caveat. You can't do that.
Yes.
But like, to me, I think that you've got to be, now it will still be maddening to be at 500 and be like, geez, we still don't know what this team is, because they're like cruising right down the middle. But I think to feel like you're not in total dire straits, you need to be at least, and again, going back to what you said about Barry Trotz making a coaching change, you can, not you, Anne, but like you fans can complain about it all you want, but Barry Trotz is not going into this season, like whether we want to manifest it or not, Barry Trotz is not going into this season saying in his head, like, okay, if by X date or by X number of games we don't have this record, I'm firing Andrew Brunette. He is not even going into this season with that as an option in his mind. That's not to say it can't quickly become one, but I'm just saying he is not going into this season with that plan. So with that in mind, you have to think about, okay, what is going to be needed for Barry Trotz to have that thought again stay out of his mind. So like, it's got to, like, for Barry Trotz, this is where I think he's got a little bit of Lou Lamoriello in him from New York. I mean, the Islanders, as long as they were within shouting distance of a wild card spot, if there was just a whisper of a concept of a chance that they could be in a wild card spot, it was like, nobody move, nobody make any changes, no one do anything. And so that is kind of how Barry Trotz is going to be. Like, if they are within shouting distance, which is to say they're at or around 500, he's not doing anything.
Yeah. It's duct tape in a dream. Like, if he can see it happen with duct tape in a dream, I agree with you. And I think that is so important, because the fan base, and I think media, and I'm not talking just local, I'm talking national media, are looking at this situation from the outside and saying, Andrew Brunette is on the hot seat. I believe it was The Athletic said, they had an article out about predictions, and they were like, the number 1 coach on the hot seat, Andrew Brunette. So everybody from the outside looking in is saying, ooh, he is on the hot seat. But I agree with you. The only
I don't think
person who
he
that
is.
matters to is Barry Trotz. And I
Yeah.
think you hit the nail on the head. I don't think Barry Trotz is going, oh gosh, okay, what if it doesn't work? I don't think Barry Trotz is having that internal conversation with himself. And I agree with you. I think they are going to have to be so bad in the first 10 games for that even to become a thought in the way back of the mind for Barry Trotz.
Right.
And that I think is probably shocking for fans and for the national media, but just knowing, like you said, it's the Lou Lamoriello, it's just the Barry Trotz, um,
It's just
developing coaches and in that, I don't know, man.
well, and you talk about on paper, right? Like on paper, it makes sense. Anyone like farther removed from this situation, anyone in the national media would look at this situation in Nashville and say, well, yes, Andrew Brunette is on the hot seat. And I would say, yes, that makes sense. But you know who does not think Andrew Brunette is on the hot seat is the one guy whose opinion matters in this
Yep,
entire conversation. And that is Barry Trotz. And I don't think Barry Trotz gives two flag nogs about what the national media is saying about the
100%.
Predators and Andrew Brunette. He doesn't care. And
Yeah.
so and I don't mean that in like a flippant way. I'm just saying that it doesn't, he's not beholden to what the media are
Mhm.
saying. So I think that you have to, I think there's a little bit of, I don't know, mob mentality sounds a little strong, but it's kind of the concept I'm going for here is like people kind of get in this echo chamber and it's like, yeah, yeah. Oh, if the Predators are bad, then they need to fire Andrew Brunette. Wait, yeah, he's on the hot seat. Yeah. And then it's like everyone kind of constructs this narrative of what they want to happen. But I think it is important. And while I'm not saying that there's no logic to that narrative,
Right.
or I'm saying it makes perfect logical sense. I am just saying that sometimes it's important take a step back and remember like who is constructing this narrative, not the person or the people who actually have the final say.
Yeah.
So that's where I think it's important because I get it. Like again, the reason it's easy to get caught up in it is because it is logical. It does make sense, but
Sure.
it's like I just don't know. I don't think it's going to happen that way.
Yeah. I think you are dead on. I think you are dead on. I don't think that Barry Trotz, well, he was honest with us, at the end of the season press conference, like he does not listen to the noise. He is not checking uh Predators Facebook. He is not reading Twitter. He is not listening to the outside noise. And look, his job is not to listen to the outside noise. So I understand that and mad respect for that, but also from the outside looking in, there is an element of watching this season start where people are going to hit a point going, "What are we doing? What are we doing?" And I think people are gonna reach that point so far sooner than Barry Trotz is even going to, like, give birth to a whisper of a thought of that. So I think we have to be prepared for that. Coming up, Nashville needs that hot start. We're going to talk about what are the keys to getting that when we look at who Nashville's going to be facing and looking at what Nashville has on the roster. All right, Emma, here is the one thing that I know for sure. I don't know a lot when it comes to this Nashville Predators team. And if you are listening to people who know something for sure about the Nashville Predators, no, they don't. But here's the thing that I do believe on a cellular level, and that is that Nashville has to get it right away. And I'm talking about training camp. Training camp has got to be so productive for this team. You're looking at this team, your top four defensemen are very different than what they have been. So you are bringing in two top four defensemen to a system that is very different, that asks different things from the defensemen, especially when it comes to like kicking off play in the defensive zone. So you've got to figure out who's with who and how they're going to work. And B, you have to get your new defenseman up to speed so quickly on what the expectation is, because Nashville did not do that last year. I hate this stat, but it is stuck in my brain. Number one in defensive zone turnovers. So bad at exiting the defensive zone. So
See, that's one where you don't even need to do math. If you watched the Nashville Predators last season, you could guess that with 100% accuracy.
accuracy.
Like they've got to be at the top of the list because, whew,
Yeah, not eye test painful. Just painful. So like you have so much pressure to get the defense right. And we know what it looks like when the defense is not where it needs to be, a la last season. So you need Brady Skjei to come in and be the Brady Skjei of April. You need Roman Josi to come in and be 100% healthy and able to communicate well with a new partner. You need the Nick squared to be able to come in and pick up what Andrew Brunette wants right away. And you need to nail down your third pairing defensemen and feel comfortable with them, because you also need UC Saros to finish training camp feeling really confident about the defense in front of him. A lot of pressure in a training camp. Just in that alone, there's a lot of pressure. Nashville has to get training camp right.
Yes, and on top of that, I agree that the defense is clearly like the most pressing area of need here. I don't think anyone's arguing that. But you also, I mean, with that, get the forward combinations
Come
figured
on,
out
girl.
and stick with them. That's not put Tommy Novak with Steven Stamkos for one shift and then decide it doesn't work. I know Tommy Novak's not here anymore. I'm just saying that's what we saw last year, where it was like, all right, this is the plan. This is what we're going to tell people the plan is. Tommy Novak, second line center with Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault. Oh, we tried it for one shift and it didn't go well. Well, that's done. And then it's like, duct tape in a dream for the rest of the season. And it's like, okay, maybe it takes a little bit more than one shift to figure out if something works or not.
Yes, I agree with you. You've got to get chemistry going on those lines, because you went 82 games / 84 years last season with basically no chemistry. You did not really get it. Towards the end of the season, you started to see some combinations working, but I would not say last season you were like, wow, this is definitely a line that's going to work moving forward, because you had no idea what line you were going to see together. You got to nail that down.
And even when you started to see some glimmers of it at the end, there was nothing that made me feel like, ooh, I feel really good about this going into next year. It was just like, maybe, it'll work. Like, and I think that too, there was that, and honestly, 84 years is a long time. So I don't even remember when during the season this happened. But at one point last year, Jonathan Marchessault, when he made that comment to the media about, yeah, it's challenging because every time I go out on the ice, I don't know who's going to be out there with me. And people made such a big deal about it. Like, oh, he's calling out the coaching. He's calling it. And I'm like, okay, but like, if put your drama cauldrons away for a second and just listen to what he's saying. It makes sense. Like, of course that would be difficult if you're going, like, imagine going into work every day and every day you get to your office, there's different people in the cubicles next to you. Like, you're working with different people every day. Like, it would take a minute. Like, it would throw you off. It would throw you out of your routine. And like, people just got so hung up on the drama and the, ooh, he's like mixing it up of it all. And it's like, okay, ignore that for a second. Just listen to what he's saying. I mean, it makes total sense. Like,
listen to the kernel of truth that he is sharing and set aside the, peripheral drama around it. I agree with you. I think it's going to be interesting too, because Barry Trotz has said, look, we don't want Stamkos playing center. We want him on the wing. Okay, then nail it down. Stop acting like that is an option in the back of your mind to pull out of the hat when you panic. take it off the table, which means
Mhm.
that you have to have a training camp that gives Fedor Svechkov confidence to be your 2C. You've got to trust Ryan O'Reilly to play up. You've got to get the best out of Luke Evangelista. You've got to figure out which Zachary LaRue do you need and do you want. So I agree with you. I think, we focus on the defense because it's like, wow, we've got to uncluster that. But you look at the line combination, there is work to be done there. The other thing I think that has to happen for Nashville is that they have to come in with a clean slate. And we talk about like Sage, the locker room, but the veterans have to be the ones to do that. Like, I'm sorry, and maybe that seems unfair, but that's what's real. The veterans in that locker room have to come in there with a fresh perspective. They struggled. They did not carry the team last year, whether that was their all on them or not, but they didn't. Now you come in and you show these younger players how you walk it out with a fresh start. It reminds me, I YouTubed this because this brings me joy. If you are an everydayer, if you are an insider, you know that Emma and I love this show, The West Wing. Love The West Wing. And there is an episode where the president is debating the Florida governor, Rob Ritchie, and his wife, the first lady, is like, I feel like I didn't do enough to help you prepare. So right as he's getting ready to leave the room and walk the corridor to go on the stage, she cuts his tie off to kind of get him like, oh my God, and so he has to steal a tie and put it on and get on stage real quick. And I'm like, someone has to cut the tie. Right before puck drop, October 9th, somebody has to cut the tie and put these veterans in that mode.
Someone needs to be Stockard Channing and come in and cut off someone's tie.
Yes.
But you're right, though, because it's not just about like, oh, the leading by example, blah, blah. Okay, what does that mean? It means when things go horribly sideways, you show by example how to deal with it. Don't get all in your feelings and all sad and pouty. And yes, even Ryan O'Reilly, while he does a lot of things well, extremely well, and there's a lot to be learned from him, maybe lighting yourself on fire every time you lose a game isn't the best. I do understand it. It sends a message of accountability, and you want to have accountability.
Sure.
But sometimes you take it a little too far, and it's like, I've held myself accountable, and now I'm just going to sit here and just slap myself in the face repeatedly, and I'm going to pout. And it's like, okay, like, I just think that, like you said, you show them how to walk it out.
Yeah. Ryan O'Reilly has to come in uncharred. He cannot have spent this offseason, and I'm talking O'Reilly, I'm talking Stamkos, I'm talking Marchessault, which I know people are like, Marchessault doesn't even want to be here. Let Jonathan Marchessault alone and stop putting words in his mouth. Let Jonathan Marchessault show up to training camp and be Jonathan Marchessault. Those guys have to come in here like Ryan O'Reilly. Don't bring a matchbook. Ain't nobody got time for that. You got to come in here fresh. And the veterans have to do that.
And the whole Marchessault thing about he doesn't want to be here. No, what Jonathan Marchessault doesn't want to do is he doesn't want to lose. He does not want to lose. And they did a lot of losing last year. 84 years, you get a lot of losing done in that time. So I just think that, it's everyone handles it differently. And I'm not trying to say that like certain players need to do certain things that are out of character for them. But I think that it is about, you have to come into this with a clean slate. And I understand, like we've even said before, last season, it's not a flush it season in the sense that, oh, out of sight, out of mind, never happened. Like I get that. Like you don't want to think of it that way. I'm saying, remember how awful that was. Remember that. So you don't ever do that again. And that's kind of when I say flush it. I don't mean forget it ever happened. It's like, no, you remember it happened. Hold on to that, but don't let that define you.
Yeah. And if the Nashville Predators are at 500 after 10 games, Nashville, that locker room cannot be like, oh crap, it's happening again. You can't do that. And
the fans
I
shouldn't do that either, but they will.
But they will. Yeah,
Mhm.
100%. Oh, yeah. And Emma and I, we're going to take deep breaths and breathe through it. But look, we have been along for this ride for 84 years as well. Like, we get the pain, we get how difficult it is, but there is a pathway of not wallowing in what was, but also becoming wiser for what was. And Nashville has to hit that right out of the gate. You cannot have the emotional baggage that we saw this team carry around, middle to the end of last season, where if they gained some momentum and then something went wrong, they're like, oh, here we go again. That has to go. Cut the tie. Cut the tie. Nashville has to do that. So, what do you think is going to be key for these Predators to get off to a great start? And where is the line for you? What's it going to take for Andrew Brunette to keep his job? What would it take for Andrew Brunette to lose his job in your mind? Let us know in the comments of this YouTube video. Let us know on social media. You can find the podcast at LO_Predators as well. Interested to hear what your thoughts are when it comes to what kind of start the Predators could have and what that start is going to mean for the team going forward. Before we log off on this Monday, Emma, let us know where everybody can find you and your work.
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingan, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
You can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio as well. Friends, that's going to do it for this Monday edition of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We're going to be back on Wednesday talking about Luke Evangelista, another player that we want to see have a hot start. We'll talk about it then.